I had been nothing but loyal for 3 years at DataCore Solutions. Every morning, I arrived 15 minutes early with my coffee still steaming. Every evening, I stayed past 6 when others rushed out. When Tom called in sick, I covered his reports. When the printer jammed during crunch time, I fixed it. I believed hard work would be noticed, rewarded, respected. That Tuesday morning changed everything. Our boss, Mr. Anderson, stood at the front of our gray cubicle maze, hands clasped behind his back like a general addressing troops. His voice carried across the office with casual authority. "Team, I need to discuss our new productivity initiative," he began, that familiar smile spreading across his face. "Effective immediately, everyone will work 2 additional hours daily. No overtime pay, of course. This is about commitment to our company family." The room went silent. 23 people stared at their keyboards, shoulders hunching like they could disappear. My chest tightened. Company family? While he bragged about record profits at last month's meeting, I scanned the faces around me. Janet bit her lip nervously. Carlos shifted in his chair, avoiding eye contact. Maria nodded quickly, fear flickering across her features. Everyone accepted it like gospel, but something inside me snapped. "Questions?" Anderson asked, scanning the room with that practiced smile. Before I could stop myself, my voice cut through the silence like breaking glass. "No." The word hung in the air. 23 heads turned toward me. Anderson's smile froze, then slowly twisted into something uglier. His eyes narrowed, focusing on me like a predator spotting prey. "Excuse me, Alex?" His voice dropped to that dangerous tone I'd heard him use with vendors who pushed back on contracts. I said no. I kept my voice steady, meeting his glare. "I won't work free overtime." Whispers rippled through the cubicles. Janet's mouth fell open. Carlos actually turned around to stare. Maria looked between Anderson and me like watching a car accident. Anderson stepped closer to my desk, his presence looming. "Not a team player, are we?" His words dripped with mock concern. "Perhaps you don't understand how business works here." My heart hammered, but I didn't flinch. "I understand perfectly." He leaned against my cubicle wall, voice loud enough for everyone to hear. "Loyalty is earned through sacrifice, Alex. Maybe you're not the right fit for our company culture." The threat was clear. Comply or leave. That afternoon, I clocked out at exactly 5:30. The sound of my time card stamping echoed through the office like a gunshot. Conversation stopped. Heads peeked over cubicle walls. Anderson watched from his corner office, arms crossed, jaw tight. Walking past his door, I felt his eyes burning into my back. Let him stare. Let him wonder why his usual intimidation tactics weren't working. In the elevator, my hands shook slightly from adrenaline. The mirror showed my face flushed but determined. I had crossed a line most employees never dared approach. But something felt different inside me. Lighter, freer. Outside, the evening air hit my face like a splash of cold water. Other DataCore employees trudged past me toward the building, staying late as commanded. Their faces looked tired, defeated. How long had we all accepted this as normal? My phone buzzed with a text from Janet. "Are you crazy?" He looked furious. I typed back, "Maybe it's time someone got furious." She didn't respond. At home, I sat at my kitchen table with a notebook and pen. If Anderson wanted to play games, I needed rules and evidence. The next morning, I created a new folder on my personal laptop, documentation. Inside, I started cataloging everything. Anderson's exact words from yesterday's meeting. The time, date, witnesses present. I wrote down every detail I could remember. Then I dug deeper. Email threads about past overtime demands. Meeting notes where Anderson casually mentioned voluntary additional hours. Screenshots of our employee handbook, which clearly stated overtime compensation policies. My phone's voice recorder became my secret weapon. I tested it discreetly, making sure it picked up conversations from my desk. Audio evidence would be invaluable. I also started tracking everyone's hours. Janet stayed until 8 most nights. Carlos often worked weekends. Maria brought lunch to eat at her desk, scared to take breaks. We were all being systematically exploited. But Anderson had made a mistake. He assumed fear would keep us quiet forever. He never considered that someone might document his behavior, study his patterns, prepare for war. At lunch, I researched labor laws. The Department of Labor website became my study guide. Unpaid overtime violations carried serious penalties, not just back pay, but fines and investigations. Anderson thought he held all the power. He was about to learn otherwise. I started watching my coworkers differently, noting their reactions and loyalties. Some were too scared to even make eye contact with me anymore. Others shot me quick, admiring glances when Anderson wasn't looking. During lunch break, Carlos approached my desk nervously. "You really think you can get away with this?" he whispered. "Get away with what? Following labor laws?" He glanced around, then leaned closer. "He's been asking questions about you. Your work quality, your attitude, whether you're a good culture fit." I nodded calmly. "Thanks for the heads up." "Alex." Carlos hesitated. "He made me work last Saturday, didn't pay overtime, said it was team building." My pen stopped moving. "How often does this happen?" "Every few weeks. Different people, different excuses, but always unpaid." After Carlos left, I added his information to my documentation. Anderson wasn't just demanding future free labor. He'd been stealing from us for months. That evening, I stayed exactly until 5:30 again. Anderson emerged from his office as I gathered my things, watching my every move. His stare felt like ice, but I met it calmly. "Leaving early again?" His voice carried across the office. "Leaving on time," I corrected. Thursday morning, Anderson cornered me in the break room. The coffee maker hummed in the background as he stepped close enough that I could smell his cologne, too strong, trying too hard. "Alex, we need to discuss your attitude problem." His voice was low, venomous. "Your behavior this week has been noticed by everyone." I continued stirring my coffee, not backing away. "What behavior?" "Defiance, insubordination, refusal to be a team player." Each word was carefully chosen, designed to cut. "Employees who don't fit our culture don't tend to last long here." The threat hung between us like a blade. I looked up from my coffee, meeting his eyes directly. "Are you threatening my job?" "I'm offering guidance. Some people need help understanding how things work." His smile was cold, predatory. "Others learn the hard way." I took a sip of coffee, keeping my voice level. "I understand perfectly how things work, Mr. Anderson." His jaw tightened. "Do you?" "Because your recent actions suggest otherwise." I smiled politely, the kind of smile that revealed nothing. "Have a great day, sir." Walking past him, I felt his anger radiating like heat. But for the first time in 3 years, I wasn't afraid of it. Back at my desk, I noticed something I'd overlooked before. A small security camera mounted above the main hallway, its red light blinking steadily. It captured everyone entering and leaving, including timestamps. The office wasn't as private as Anderson believed. Every interaction, every intimidation attempt, every casual threat was potentially being recorded. The thought made me smile quietly. I also realized the company's own security system could work in my favor. Their electronic time tracking showed exactly when people clocked in and out versus when they actually left. If Anderson was forcing unpaid overtime, the evidence was already in their computers. During my lunch break, I researched public records. DataCore Solutions had faced one small labor complaint 3 years ago, quickly settled out of court. Anderson had learned to be more careful with his exploitation, but not careful enough. The afternoon passed quietly. Anderson stayed in his office, occasionally glancing out at me through his window. I worked steadily, professionally, giving him nothing to criticize about my actual performance. At 5:30 sharp, I gathered my things. The sound of my chair pushing back echoed through the unusually quiet office. Anderson's door opened as I reached the elevator. "Have a lovely evening, Alex." His tone was silk over steel. That night, I spread 3 months of timesheets across my kitchen table. The patterns were impossible to ignore. Carlos worked 53 hours 2 weeks ago, paid for 40. Janet logged 48 hours last month, compensated for 40. Maria consistently worked Saturdays, marked as voluntary team building. The numbers didn't lie. Anderson had been systematically stealing from us, disguising wage theft as company loyalty. My calculator showed hundreds of unpaid hours across our small team. But the real revelation was in my own records. Last month, when I covered for Tom during his sick leave, I'd worked 12 extra hours. Anderson praised my dedication, but never mentioned overtime pay. I'd been complicit in my own exploitation. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Stop causing trouble, or things will get worse." I screenshot the message, adding it to my growing evidence file. Anonymous threats were classic intimidation tactics. They also showed Anderson was getting desperate. I texted back, Who is this? No response. I printed copies of all the timesheets, storing originals in a safety deposit box the next morning. If Anderson wanted to play dirty, I needed insurance. Friday afternoon, I made the call that would change everything. The Department of Labor's Wage and Hour Division answered on the third ring. I'd like to report unpaid overtime violations, I said, speaking quietly from my car during lunch break. The investigator, Miss Rodriguez, was thorough and professional. She explained the process: formal complaint filing, documentation requirements, potential investigations. I took careful notes. Do you have evidence of the violations? She asked. Extensive documentation, timesheets, emails, witness statements, recordings. Recordings? My boss's demands for unpaid work made in front of multiple witnesses. There was a pause. That's excellent evidence. How many employees are affected? Our entire department, 23 people. Another pause, longer this time. Mr. Patterson, this sounds like a significant case. Are you prepared for potential retaliation? I looked through my car window at the DataCorp building, Anderson's corner office visible on the third floor. I'm prepared. Good. I'll email you the formal complaint forms. Submit everything within 48 hours for fastest processing. After hanging up, I sat in my car for 10 minutes, hands steady on the steering wheel. The point of no return was approaching fast. Monday morning brought an electric tension to the office. Whispers followed me to my desk. Anderson's door stayed closed, but I could see him on phone calls, gesturing sharply. Janet approached during break, eyes wide with worry. Alex, there are rumors about an investigation. People are saying you called the Labor Department. I kept my voice neutral. People say lots of things. He's been asking questions about everyone's hours, double-checking timesheets. She glanced around nervously. Something's coming. By noon, the rumors had spread through the entire floor. Carlos mentioned seeing Anderson meeting with HR. Maria whispered about sudden policy changes being discussed in management meetings. The first tremor of fear had flickered across Anderson's features when he emerged for lunch. His usual confident stride seemed forced. His smile looked painted on. I worked calmly through the afternoon, documenting the changed atmosphere. The anonymous, threatening texts had stopped, replaced by an ominous silence. Anderson knew something was happening, but couldn't identify the exact threat. At 5:30, I packed up as usual. Anderson's office light was still on, but his door remained closed. He was probably making damage control calls, trying to shore up his defenses. He had no idea how thorough my attack would be. Tuesday brought an emergency all-hands meeting. Anderson stood at the front of the conference room, his smile more brittle than usual. 23 employees crowded around the oval table, confusion and anxiety thick in the air. Team, I want to address some concerns that have been brought to my attention, he began, his voice carefully modulated. It seems there's been confusion about our overtime policies. I kept my expression neutral, hands folded calmly in my lap. Every word he spoke was being mentally recorded for later documentation. Let me be absolutely clear. DataCorp Solutions follows all labor laws rigorously. Any overtime work must be pre-approved and properly compensated. Janet shot me a confused glance. Carlos stared at his hands. Everyone knew this was a complete reversal of his previous demands. Anderson's eyes found mine across the table. Sometimes miscommunications happen. What matters is that we're all on the same page moving forward. I nodded politely, watching him squirm. He was trying to rewrite history, but my documentation told the real story. Every witness in this room had heard his original demands. Are there any questions about our updated overtime policy? Silence filled the room. His smile grew more strained. Excellent. Let's get back to work. After the meeting, several coworkers approached me discreetly. The dam of fear was finally breaking. Maria whispered, "He made me work 3 Saturdays last month. Called it mandatory team building." Janet added, "I've been staying until 8 every night for 6 weeks. He said it showed commitment." Carlos was most surprising. I kept track of my unpaid hours, over 40 this quarter. Each confession strengthened my case. I listened carefully, taking mental notes while offering quiet reassurance. They were finally ready to speak truth to power. That afternoon, I submitted my formal complaint to the Department of Labor. 23 pages of evidence, timesheets, email threads, witness statements, and detailed logs of Anderson's illegal demands. The email confirmation arrived within an hour. Your complaint has been received and assigned, case number WH224-3847. An investigator will contact you within 5 business days. I printed the confirmation, adding it to my file. The wheels of justice were now in motion. Anderson emerged from his office twice that afternoon, both times glancing nervously in my direction. He could sense something was wrong, but couldn't pinpoint the threat. His empire of fear was about to crumble, and he didn't even know it. Wednesday morning brought a discovery that made my pulse race. While organizing old emails, I found a thread I'd forgotten about. Anderson had written to his manager 3 months ago, implementing cost-saving measures in our department. Staff overtime eliminated through voluntary hour extensions. Voluntary. He documented his own crime, calling wage theft a cost-saving measure. I screenshot the email immediately, backing it up to 3 different cloud accounts. This was smoking gun evidence, written proof of deliberate law violation. The email also revealed Anderson's motivation. He'd promised his boss reduced labor costs to boost quarterly profits. My team's stolen wages were padding someone else's bonus. At lunch, I researched Anderson's manager, Victoria Hamilton, VP of Operations. Her LinkedIn showed ambition and corporate credentials, but also mentions of ethical business practices and employee welfare. She might be an ally, or she might circle the wagons to protect Anderson. Either way, she'd need to answer questions when investigators came calling. That afternoon, Anderson called another impromptu meeting. His demeanor had shifted again, less confident, more desperate. Team, I want to emphasize that DataCore values work-life balance. Please ensure you're logging accurate hours and taking appropriate breaks. The about face was almost comical. Anderson tried a new approach Thursday morning, calling me into his office for a performance review. His desk was cluttered with employee files and policy manuals. Clearly, he'd been researching damage control. Alex, I want to discuss your recent attitude and its impact on team morale. He leaned back in his leather chair, trying to project authority. My attitude? I kept my voice professionally neutral. Your negativity has been noticed, questioning company policies, undermining management decisions. His fingers drummed against the desk. It's creating a toxic environment. I almost laughed. The man who'd been stealing wages was lecturing me about toxicity. I've been following all company policies, I replied calmly. Have you? Because several team members have expressed concerns about your behavior. That was a lie, and we both knew it. But I didn't take the bait. Which team members? His jaw tightened. That's confidential. I see. I made a mental note to document this intimidation attempt. Anderson leaned forward, voice dropping to that familiar threatening tone. Sometimes employees who can't adapt to company culture find better opportunities elsewhere. I met his stare directly. Is that advice or a threat? His smile was arctic, just friendly guidance. I timed my next move perfectly. Thursday evening, after everyone had left, I submitted additional evidence to the Department of Labor. Anderson's voluntary overtime email, documentation of his intimidation attempts, and witness statements from 5 coworkers. The investigators now had enough evidence to bury him. Friday morning, Anderson seemed different. His usual swagger was replaced by nervous energy. He kept checking his phone, glancing at his computer screen, pacing around his office like a caged animal. I worked steadily, professionally, giving him nothing to criticize. My performance was flawless, which made his upcoming downfall even more satisfying. At noon, my phone rang. Ms. Rodriguez from the Department of Labor. Mr. Patterson, we've reviewed your submission. This appears to be a significant wage theft case. We're fast-tracking the investigation. How quickly? Initial contact with the employer will be made Monday morning. Are you prepared for potential retaliation? I glanced toward Anderson's office, where he was having an animated phone conversation. I'm ready. Good. Keep documenting everything. This case could set an important precedent. After hanging up, I felt a calm satisfaction settle over me. Monday would bring Anderson's first real taste of fear. Monday morning arrived with unseasonable sunshine. I dressed carefully in my best suit, wanting to look professional when the investigators arrived. At exactly 9:15, 2 federal investigators entered DataCore's lobby. I watched from my desk as they spoke with reception, showed credentials, and requested to speak with management. Anderson emerged from his office, confusion flickering across his face. The investigators were polite but firm. They needed to discuss wage and hour compliance issues immediately. I couldn't hear the conversation, but Anderson's body language told the story. His shoulders tensed, his smile became forced. When one investigator mentioned my name, his head snapped in my direction. 20 minutes later, they disappeared into the conference room with Anderson and Victoria Hamilton, who'd been summoned from the executive floor. Through the glass walls, I could see Anderson gesturing defensively while the investigators took notes. My coworkers whispered nervously, sensing something major was happening. Janet kept glancing between the conference room and my desk, putting pieces together. The meeting lasted 2 hours. When Anderson finally emerged, his face was pale, his usual confidence shattered. He avoided eye contact with everyone, including me. The investigators requested to speak with employees privately. One by one, my coworkers were called into HR for confidential interviews. Each emerged looking relieved, sometimes surprised. Janet was first. She returned to her desk with wide eyes, mouthing "thank you" in my direction. Carlos came back grinning. They asked about unpaid Saturday work. I told them everything. Maria actually hugged me in the break room. "I never thought anyone would listen. You gave us a voice." By Wednesday, all 23 employees had been interviewed. The investigators had compiled a devastating picture of systematic wage theft spanning months. Anderson barely left his office, conducting hushed phone calls with what I assumed were company lawyers. Victoria Hamilton made several visits, each more tense than the last. The investigation had taken on a life of its own. What started as my individual complaint had exposed company-wide labor violations. During lunch, I received another call from Ms. Rodriguez. "Mr. Patterson, preliminary findings show over $40,000 in unpaid wages across your department. This is one of the largest cases we've seen this year." $40,000. Anderson's cost-saving measures had robbed us blind. What happens next? Settlement negotiations. But given the scope of violations, criminal charges are possible. Anderson's empire was collapsing faster than I'd imagined. Thursday brought the first wave of testimony from colleagues. I learned details that shocked even me about Anderson's systematic exploitation. Carlos had worked 60 unpaid hours over 3 months. Janet had been forced to skip family dinners for mandatory evening projects. Maria had given up weekend plans repeatedly for Anderson's team-building demands. Each story added weight to our case, but they also revealed the human cost of his greed. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. They were stolen moments with families, missed opportunities, sacrificed personal time. The investigators interviewed me again, focusing on my role in organizing the complaint. I explained my documentation process, shared my evidence, and detailed Anderson's intimidation attempts. "You've built an exceptionally strong case," the lead investigator noted. "Your preparation made this investigation possible." That afternoon, rumors spread about a company-wide audit. The Department of Labor was expanding their investigation to other departments, looking for patterns of wage theft. Anderson's problem was metastasizing beyond our small team. His reputation within the company was crumbling as executives distanced themselves from potential liability. I watched him through his office window, shoulders slumped, phone pressed to his ear. He looked like a man watching his world collapse. Friday brought news that made my jaw drop. The company's accountant, Harold Chen, was called in to calculate exact damages from unpaid overtime. The preliminary number was $47,000 owed to our department alone. That figure didn't include penalties, interest, or fines the company would face for labor law violations. Anderson's cost-saving scheme would ultimately cost DataCore hundreds of thousands of dollars. Victoria Hamilton held an emergency meeting with department heads, presumably discussing damage control and potential legal exposure. The company's stock price had already begun sliding as word leaked to industry publications. Anderson made one final attempt at intimidation, approaching my desk after most colleagues had left. "This isn't over," he said quietly, voice trembling with suppressed rage. "Actually, it is," I replied calmly. "Your scheme is finished. You've destroyed everything I built here." I looked up from my computer, meeting his desperate stare. I didn't destroy anything. I just documented what you were already doing. He opened his mouth to respond, then closed it. What could he say? Every word would only confirm his guilt. Have a nice weekend, Mr. Anderson. He walked away, shoulders sagging in defeat. Monday brought settlement negotiations. Datacorp's lawyers met with Department of Labor representatives to discuss terms for resolving the wage theft case. I wasn't present for those discussions, but the results spoke volumes. By Tuesday afternoon, word spread that the company would pay full restitution plus penalties to all affected employees. Anderson was suspiciously absent that day. Rumors circulated about sudden medical leave or family emergencies, but everyone knew the truth. He was probably meeting with lawyers, trying to minimize his personal liability. Victoria Hamilton addressed our department Wednesday morning, her tone carefully professional. Datacorp is committed to full compliance with labor laws. We're implementing new oversight procedures to prevent future issues. She didn't mention Anderson by name, but his empty office spoke louder than words. Anyone with concerns about workplace policies should feel free to contact HR directly, she continued. We value employee feedback and take all complaints seriously. I almost smiled at that last part. They certainly took my complaints seriously, after ignoring the problem for months. Janet leaned over after the meeting. Do you think he'll be fired? He's already gone, I whispered back. They just haven't announced it yet. Thursday brought the official settlement announcement. Datacorp Solutions would pay $67,000 in back wages and penalties to 23 employees in our department. Individual payments ranged from $1,200 to $4,800, depending on hours worked. My personal settlement was $3,100, money Anderson had stolen through his wage theft scheme. But the real victory was larger, holding a bully accountable for systematic exploitation. Anderson's office remained empty. His nameplate had been quietly removed, his files boxed up by security. The company was pretending he'd never existed, hoping to minimize damage to their reputation. Several major clients had already expressed concerns about Datacorp's labor practices. 2 contracts were reportedly under review, with clients threatening to switch to competitors. Anderson's greed hadn't just hurt employees, it was poisoning the entire company's business relationships. I received a call from Ms. Rodriguez with a final update. Mr. Patterson, this case will likely trigger industry-wide audits. Your documentation helped expose a common problem. I just wanted fair treatment. You got that, and much more. Sometimes one person's courage changes everything. After hanging up, I sat quietly at my desk, processing the magnitude of what had happened. Friday afternoon, Anderson made one last appearance at Datacorp. I watched through the lobby windows as he entered with a security escort, presumably to clear out personal items or sign termination paperwork. He looked haggard, his usual polished appearance replaced by rumpled clothes and obvious stress. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by the nervous movements of someone whose career had imploded. Carla spotted him too. Think he regrets it now? Probably regrets getting caught, I replied. Anderson spent 30 minutes in the building before emerging with a small cardboard box, the contents of his once powerful corner office reduced to a few personal items. As he walked past the lobby windows, he glanced up toward our floor. Even from a distance, I could see the bitterness in his expression. He'd lost everything, job, reputation, future opportunities, because he couldn't resist stealing from his own employees. Karma's a beautiful thing, Maria said quietly, watching him disappear around the corner. That afternoon, Victoria Hamilton sent a company-wide email announcing organizational changes in our department. A new manager would be hired after a comprehensive search process. The email emphasized Datacorp's commitment to ethical management practices and employee welfare, language that would have been laughable a month ago. My last day at Datacorp was surprisingly peaceful. I'd given 2 weeks' notice after accepting a position with a competitor, a company that had specifically recruited me because of my reputation for standing up to workplace abuse. Colleagues stopped by my desk throughout the day, thanking me for having the courage they couldn't find. Some shared horror stories about Anderson's behavior they'd never reported. Others admitted they'd been looking for new jobs, but were too scared to leave. You inspired all of us, Janet said, presenting me with a card signed by the entire department. We were trapped, and you showed us the way out. The irony wasn't lost on me. Anderson had tried to use fear as a weapon to control us. Instead, his bullying had motivated me to document everything meticulously and fight back systematically. At 5:30, I packed my personal items into the same cardboard box I'd brought 3 years ago. But I was leaving as a completely different person, confident, empowered, unafraid. Walking through the lobby for the last time, I passed Anderson's former office. It was already being prepared for renovation, all traces of his reign of intimidation erased. Outside, the evening air felt crisp and full of possibility. I'd spent 3 years accepting that workplace abuse was normal, that employees had no power against exploitative managers. One word had changed everything. No. A month later, I sat in a coffee shop across from Ms. Rodriguez, reviewing the final case report. Anderson's voluntary overtime scheme had become a case study in wage theft, referenced in Department of Labor training materials. Your documentation was extraordinary, she said, flipping through her notes. Most employees don't think to preserve evidence systematically. You built a bulletproof case. I got tired of being powerless. You were never powerless. You just needed to realize your own strength. The DataCore case had triggered industry-wide audits, resulting in millions of dollars recovered for exploited workers. Other employees had contacted me seeking advice about fighting workplace abuse. I'd become an accidental advocate for workers' rights, speaking at labor conferences and consulting with legal aid organizations. The shy, compliant employee who once arrived early and stayed late had transformed into someone who fought for justice. Anderson's LinkedIn profile had disappeared entirely. Industry contacts mentioned he'd struggled to find new employment, his reputation permanently tainted by the wage theft scandal. Do you ever regret it? Ms. Rodriguez asked. I thought about my co-workers, now working under fair management, about the money they'd recovered, about the precedent we'd set for holding exploitative bosses accountable. Never. Sometimes standing up is the only option left. 6 months after saying no to Anderson's scheme, I reflected on how one word had changed my entire life. I was earning 30% more at my new company, working for managers who respected both labor laws and human dignity. DataCore had implemented comprehensive overtime policies and ethics training. Victoria Hamilton publicly credited employee feedback for helping the company improve its practices, though she still avoided mentioning the investigation that forced those changes. My former colleagues regularly sent updates about their improved working conditions. 3 had been promoted, 2 had started families, finally able to maintain work-life balance. All expressed gratitude for my willingness to fight when they couldn't. Anderson had vanished from our industry entirely. His attempt to build an empire on stolen wages had backfired spectacularly, destroying his career while empowering his victims. The case had taught me that workplace bullies derive their power from employee silence. They count on fear, desperation, and ignorance to maintain their schemes. But systematic documentation and legal action could topple even the most entrenched abuser. I kept a framed copy of Anderson's voluntary overtime email on my office wall, a reminder that sometimes the most powerful word in any language is the simplest one. No. One word, chosen carefully and backed by evidence, had dismantled a bully's empire and freed 23 people from exploitation. Sometimes that's all it takes.